The local Gimli cinema possessed an architectural layout that Jessie had meticulously scouted prior to their arrival. He guided Kira past the worn, patterned carpet of the lobby and directly into the dimly lit auditorium. He bypassed the center seating entirely, steering them toward the extreme back left corner. "I have secured coordinates, row J, seats 1 and 2, Jessie murmured, leaning close to her ear. He maintained the low, precise cadence he used exclusively for her. "The structural wall provides a defensible physical barrier on your left flank. Our proximity to the exit door is exactly 3.4 meters. If the acoustic or visual input exceeds your processing capacity, my extraction protocol will have us entirely outside the building in under 10 seconds. Kira stood in her soft pink Hello Kitty shirt, scanning the spatial dimensions. She ran a thumb along the smooth seam of her sweatpants. "The geometric parameters are acceptable," she confirmed, her tone matching his measured rhythm. "The exit vector is highly efficient. I am prepared to hold this position." "I will acquire our required nutritional supplements," Jessie said. "Maintain your anchor here. I will return in precisely 4 minutes." Jessie traversed the sloped aisle, his heavy winter boots silencing his steps. At the brightly lit concession stand, a teenage employee looked up with a bored expression. Jessie's posture relaxed slightly, his vocabulary shifting seamlessly into the casual, fluid syntax of the median population. "Hey, just need 2 medium popcorns and 2 medium fountain drinks, please. Diet Cola for both." Back in the dim sanctuary of row J, Kira retrieved her mobile device. She required immediate cognitive grounding while her primary constant was away. She opened a feline-themed Sudoku application. The predictable logic of the 9x9 grid, utilizing distinctly colored cat icons instead of numerical digits, offered a mathematical anchor. She dragged a digitally rendered calico into an empty quadrant, calculating the intersecting columns with soothing precision. "It's just what Bert was saying at the diner," a hushed voice echoed from 2 rows ahead. Kira's fingers instantly froze over the touchscreen. Her ears twitched, highly sensitized to the sudden auditory variable. She did not raise her head. She did not shift her posture. She simply reduced her respiratory rate to shallow, silent intervals, converting her entire physical form into an undetectable observational node. "He was making it sound like she completely lost her mind," a second voice replied, accompanied by the rustle of a winter coat. "Something about the police and the hospital, but I saw her at the pharmacy just last week. She looked totally normal to me." "Bert has a big mouth," the first voice muttered. "Always trying to make himself look like the smart one in that family." Kira stared at the glowing Sudoku grid. The unauthorized data entered her processing center, threatening to initiate a cognitive loop. Her chest tightened. Bert's unregulated broadcast of her vulnerabilities remained an active hazard in her local grid. She forced her thumb to drag a tuxedo cat icon into the correct square, demanding her brain focus on the infallible laws of the puzzle rather than the unpredictable cruelty of the median population. A shadow fell over her row. Jessie slid into seat 2, balancing the identical concession items with flawless symmetry. He placed 1 waxed paper bag of popcorn and 1 cold beverage directly into her waiting hands. Almost instantly, his dark brown eyes locked onto her rigid shoulders. "Your physiological output is elevated," Jessie observed, his voice dropping into its protective, clinical register. He leaned in, analyzing the tight grip she had on the plastic cup. "Your respiratory rate is currently shallow. Did a hostile variable breach the perimeter while I was acquiring inventory? I can initiate the extraction protocol immediately. We can abort this field test." Kira looked down at the perfectly portioned bag of popped kernels. She calculated the friction of leaving versus the value of remaining. She took a slow, deliberate breath, forcing her lungs to expand fully. "Negative," Kira answered, her voice trembling slightly before finding its mechanical rhythm. "I will maintain my position. I have calculated 2 primary data points for remaining in this environment. First, Johnny Depp is rendering the character of Ebenezer. My historical data indicates his performance metrics are consistently highly engaging. Second, this is a Christmas-themed narrative. Jessie tilted his head, processing the variables, confirming the relevance of the holiday narrative. Christmas movies indicate the temporal proximity of late autumn and early winter, Kira explained, her hazel eyes finally meeting his. That means November 18th is approaching. Your birthday, Jessie translated smoothly. The protective tension in his jaw melted into a look of profound, unwavering affection. He leaned across the armrest, pressing a soft, deliberate kiss to her cheek. It was a brief, highly controlled physical contact, mathematically calculated not to overwhelm her sensory limits. We should execute a celebration optimized entirely for your preferences. I propose a secure resort environment. We can utilize a heavily regulated wave pool and a predictable lazy river. Kira processed the concept. A wave pool operates on a mathematically flawless mechanical cycle, she noted, the tightness in her chest dissipating. That is an acceptable operational parameter. Meanwhile, miles away in the brightly lit corridor of the Selkirk Hospital, Bert stood before Aunt Deborah. His broad shoulders were slumped, his usual loud momentum replaced by a heavy, uncomfortable stillness. He stared at the linoleum floor, wrestling with a deeply unfamiliar sense of humility. I understand now, Bert said, his volume strictly regulated. I compromised her safety grid to stroke my own ego. I need to know how to make it right with Kira. Please. Deborah crossed her arms, her sharp gaze assessing his sincerity. She saw the genuine respect finally taking root in his posture. You do not apologize to her face, Deborah instructed coldly. That requires her to process your emotional guilt, which is an unfair processing tax. If you want to prove your respect for her environment, you will repair what was broken. Bert looked up, waiting for the directive. Her apartment deadbolt is still splintered from Darcy's breach, Deborah stated. You will go to the hardware store. You will purchase a reinforced, high-security brass lock. You will install it perfectly. Then, you will secure a heavily insulated transport container of sweet egg sushi and leave it on her counter. You will do all of this, and you will vacate the premises long before she is discharged. You will restore her sanctuary without demanding to be seen. Bert nodded slowly, accepting the logistical burden. I will optimize her perimeter. She won't even know I was there. Back in the Gimli cinema, the overhead lights dimmed to complete darkness, leaving only the soft amber glow of the exit sign near their row. The projector flickered to life, throwing a massive, rectangular beam of light across the auditorium. Jessie reached over and gently intertwined his fingers with Kira's. She did not pull away. The acoustic and visual variables of the film commenced, but Kira's internal grid was entirely stable. Her physical firewall was in position, her future coordinates were plotted, and her most secure variable was holding her hand. The cinematic projection terminated with a sequence of scrolling white text against a black background, signaling the optimal departure window. Kira remained in seat 2 of row J until the median population had completely evacuated the auditorium, leaving behind the stale scent of artificial butter and spilled carbonated syrup. The ambient temperature of the room had dropped considerably without the collective body heat of the crowd, and she rubbed her. The cinematic projection terminated with a sequence of scrolling white text against a black background, signaling the optimal departure window. Kira remained in seat 2 of row J until the median population had completely evacuated the auditorium, leaving behind the stale scent of artificial butter and spilled carbonated syrup. The ambient temperature of the room had dropped considerably without the collective body heat of the crowd, and she rubbed her palms against her soft gray sweatpants in a rhythmic, self-soothing motion. My thermal regulation is currently operating at a deficit, Kira stated, keeping her vocal volume calibrated strictly to the empty theater. The hospital environment requires a specific textile layer to optimize my nocturnal baseline. I require the fluffy burgundy house coat currently located at my Gimli coordinates to maintain my equilibrium. Jessie analyzed her request, processing the logistics of the dark, freezing evening. The diversion would add exactly 22.5 minutes to their transit time, but securing her physical firewall against the hospital's sterile, clinical chill was a high-priority objective. The requested detour falls within our authorized leave window, Jessie confirmed, his voice adopting the structured, mechanical cadence she required to feel entirely safe. We will execute a temporary insertion into your apartment to extract the requested textile. Your thermal stability is paramount. They navigated the icy, salt-stained pavement to Jessie's vehicle. Inside the car, Jessie maintained a rigidly controlled acoustic environment, keeping the radio muted and setting the heater fan on a low, steady, predictable hum. The drive to her apartment complex was calculated and frictionless, the tires crunching over packed snow as they traced the frozen shoreline of Lake Winnipeg. When they reached the second floor of the familiar brick building, Jessie positioned himself slightly ahead of Kira. He was prepared to mitigate any lingering visual data from Darcy's prior, violent intrusion, his muscles tensing as he assumed his role as her physical firewall. He reached for the handle, then abruptly stopped. The splintered wood surrounding the deadbolt had been flawlessly repaired. In place of the compromised, shattered hardware, a heavy, high-security brass lock gleamed under the flickering hallway light. The installation was mathematically perfect, completely flush against the frame, leaving zero gaps for leverage. Kira stepped forward, her hazel eyes scanning the new brass fixture with intense focus. She retrieved her keychain, selecting the heavy, uncatalogued key that she had been given by the superintendent but had not yet utilized, and slid it into the cylinder. It turned with a satisfying, heavily weighted click that vibrated smoothly up her arm. The door swung open. The interior sanctuary was undisturbed, smelling faintly of citrus cleaner rather than destruction, but the kitchen island held an unauthorized modification. A heavily insulated transport container sat in the exact geometric center of the counter. Surrounding its base, arranged in a flawless, alternating chromatic circle, were spherical Lindor chocolate units encompassing every available flavor profile. Kira approached the counter with cautious, deliberate steps, mapping the new variables. She unlatched the insulated container, the plastic yielding with a soft snap. Inside, neatly partitioned in symmetrical rows, was a fresh, optimal supply of sweet egg sushi. She processed the variables, her brow furrowing slightly as she calculated the statistical probability of the delivery. She turned to Jessie, who stood in the entryway silently observing the restored perimeter. "Did you execute this supply drop?" she asked, analyzing his timeline for any unaccounted logistical windows. Jessie surveyed the repaired door and the perfectly aligned spherical chocolates. He felt a profound wave of relief that her sanctuary had been restabilized without triggering a sensory spike or initiating a cognitive loop of trauma. "Negative," Jessie replied, stepping fully into the apartment and meeting her gaze with steady, absolute assurance. "My operational focus has been entirely anchored to your coordinates. The operative responsible for this restoration must be a highly benevolent external variable." Kira looked back at the sweet egg sushi. The data point did not compute with any known hostile variables. It was an act of pure, calculated symmetry designed specifically for her neurological comfort. "The variable's intervention is accepted," Kira determined, carefully extracting a single red Lindor sphere. She then proceeded to her bedroom, efficiently retrieving the fluffy burgundy house coat from its designated hanger, smoothing the fibers before draping it over her arm. Miles away, navigating the dark, wind-swept stretch of Highway 9 toward Winnipeg, Bert kept his truck's heater blasting. The silence of the cab felt entirely different from the loud, boisterous energy he usually broadcasted to the world. He reached for his phone, mounted on the dashboard, and tapped a contact, the screen illuminating his tired face. "Yeah, it's me," Bert said as soon as the line connected, keeping his voice subdued and carefully regulated. "The lock is replaced. High-security brass, just like you said. And I left the food and chocolates right in the middle of the island. I was out of there long before they even left the movie theater." On the other end, Aunt Deborah let out a long, slow exhale that crackled through the truck's speakers. "Good. Did you leave a note?" "No," Bert replied, gripping the steering wheel tighter. "You said an apology would just be a processing tax on her system. I just fixed the perimeter and left. I didn't want to create any friction." "I am proud of you, Bert," Deborah said, her voice softer and more genuine than it had been in weeks. "You respected her environment. That means more than any loud apology ever could. Drive safe." Back at the Selkirk Mental Hospital, the fluorescent lights buzzed with their familiar 60 hertz hum, casting long, sterile shadows across the linoleum floor. Kira stood at the nursing station, holding the fluffy burgundy house coat tightly against her chest. A night nurse approached with a large, sanitized plastic bin. "We just need to run it through our thermal decontamination unit, Kira. Standard protocol to ensure no outside contagions linger on the fabric from your excursion." Kira analyzed the nurse's statement, checking it against her internal registry of hospital rules. "Thermal decontamination ensures a sterile baseline," she agreed, placing the burgundy textile into the plastic bin with rigid precision. "You may proceed with the sterilization protocol. I require its return before the nocturnal cycle commences." While Kira monitored the nurse's departure down the hall, Jessie spotted Dr. Evans emerging from the staff room with a stack of files. Jessie relaxed his shoulders, shifting his posture away from the rigid firewall stance and allowing his vocabulary to loosen into the casual rhythm of the median population. "Hey, Doc, do you have a minute?" Jessie asked, falling into step beside the physician. "I wanted to clear an a trip, for Kira's birthday next weekend. I want to take her to a resort. It has a heavily regulated wave pool and a lazy river she wants to map out." Dr. Evans stopped and consulted his tablet, his expression serious but accommodating. "A resort environment is a massive sensory load, Jessie. The acoustic variables alone can be overwhelming. But she handled the cinema excursion exceptionally well tonight. I can authorize a weekend pass, but there is an absolute zero-tolerance condition." "The medication," Jessie supplied instantly, his jaw tightening with determination. "I know." "Exactly," Dr. Evans said, tapping the screen of his tablet for emphasis. "She must take her citalopram precisely on schedule. Her biochemical baseline is still too fragile to withstand a missed dose, especially in a high-stimulation environment. As long as she takes her pills, she can go." "I'll make sure it's managed flawlessly," Jessie promised, feeling a surge of anticipation. "Thank you." Jessie walked back down the sterile corridor toward the telemetry ward. Kira was standing by her door, her arms folded neatly as she awaited the return of her decontaminated housecoat. Jessie approached her, instantly re-engaging his rigid posture and shifting his vocal cadence back to the precise, measured tone she relied on for absolute security. "I have interfaced with the medical authority," Jessie stated, stopping at a respectful distance to allow her visual processing to catch up to his presence. "The birthday resort operation is fully authorized. The coordinates are officially a go." Kira's hazel eyes widened slightly, her fingers tapping a rapid, joyful rhythm against her arm. "The mechanical wave pool is secured," she confirmed, a soft smile breaking through her clinical exterior. "I will begin optimizing my packing algorithms immediately."